Hey, what's happening, everybody? It is 8 o'clock on the East Coast, Tuesday night, May 28th. We got a banger tonight of a show. We got Charlie Williams from Grey Rider Reptiles and shedtesting.com. That's one and the same if you're not familiar. And then Dr. Ben Morrill from Rare Genetics Incorporated. I got to give a special thanks to both gentlemen for being willing to do this. We're going to talk about that on the show tonight as well. But also a special shout out to Steven at Leviathan Snakes. Steven cooked this whole thing up and called me out of the blue and said, hey, this would be a fun idea. And I was like, I don't think there's a chance in hell that that's going to happen. But I guess if they're into it, I will, I'll host them. Steven called me back and 45 minutes. He's like, they're in, figure out a date. I'm like, okay, cool. So anyhow, thank you to Steven at Leviathan Snakes. Note to self and to everybody out there. When Steven's determined to bring something to life, he does an excellent job of doing so. There's been many times in the years now that I've known him. He's been a great friend. And thank you very, very much to Leviathan Snakes. That's Steven and Courtney. If you're not familiar with them, you should be. Check them out. And I know they have a Patreon and, of course, a great YouTube channel and all of that sort of thing. So welcome to Proper Royals Live. If you haven't seen the show before and you're checking it out because you saw it on, Rare Genetics on Instagram or Charlie's channel on Instagram as well, thank you so much. I hope that you will consider subscribing, all of that sorts of thing. We do this every Tuesday night, and I tend to focus on the business aspect of ball python business and reptile business, and I hope that you will hang out. A couple announcements tonight before we get to the show. I promise you the announcements will not be long. Non-reptile related, completely personal, selfish announcement. This Saturday at Egan Arms Pub in Egan, Minnesota, Saturday, June 1st, 5 to 8 p.m., I'll be performing my own banner solo show, Adam Shira Acoustic at Egan Arms Pub. And I'm pretty pumped. It's been a long time since I've done a solo show under my own banner, and first one in Minnesota since moving here last year. So pretty pumped about that. Looking forward to getting back onto the music scene, and a little paycheck ain't bad either. So come and hang out. All you locals, seriously, come drink a beer. It's 5 to 8. You could still get home in time. Like if Saturday's your feeding night, you can get home in time to feed. Guys, the Tampa Repticon is coming up. That is, it's a week from this coming weekend. That's what it is. It's a week from Saturday. I still have a table at the Tampa Repticon, and it's not spoken for. I've got it. If you want it, I don't make a penny on it. You got to pay me for it, but you can have it at cost. You do have to pay for the electricity, and you got to pay for the table. But if you're interested, it's available. I've kept it for friends, Patreon members, that sort of thing. They've all gotten their own tables. They're all off the wait list. Who needs a table at Tampa Repticon? I think it's sold out. So if you need a table, let me know. It's available. You can message me. There's a LinkTree link down below in the description, or just properroyals@gmail.com will get you there. Locals, I got a ton of ASFs. If you're going to need them for hatchling season, for your hatchlings to get started on, get in touch with me. Let's start coordinating what your needs are going to be. Get ahead of this. You don't want to have hatchlings and not be able to feed them feeders. I've got ASFs ready to go to get your hatchlings started for hatchling season. And a big surprise, thank you to Dave Kaufman. I filmed with Dave, I don't know, 3 weeks ago at the Snake Discovery Expo over in Wisconsin. And I knew he had filmed some at my table, and we chatted for quite a bit. He put the whole thing in his episode today. How cool was that? So thanks to Dave Kaufman. It was really the first time we'd interacted or spent any time together, but thank you very, very much. That's a huge platform. Go check it out. There's some cool snakes in there. If you like something you see, most of them are still for sale. So get in touch with me on that. And last but not least, a couple notes on transparency and the setting tonight. First off, thank you, audience, for being here. There's 39 of you out of the gate. I think we'll probably get above 100 viewers live tonight, which is a pretty cool thing. That's a massive audience, even for as long as I've been at this podcast. If you haven't been here before, I'm not here to stir up any trouble between these two guys. They've both been gracious enough to come on the show together. It's really learning about the industry of genetic testing, where we're at, where we're going. The excitement from audience was great today. Look at all those questions. Those are all questions that I got submitted either by text message or in the comments on Instagram. So we got a bunch of cool audience questions that we'll get to. You guys can type in questions in the chat. I'm going to do my best to follow those. But hosting the show, engaging the camera, engaging the chat, and engaging the guests and keeping the show going. If I miss something, forgive me. I think the guys will be looking at it as well. Also, from a point of transparency, Charlie is at Grey Rider, shedtesting.com, is a strong supporter of the show, a financial supporter, advertising partner. In a gracious move on his part, he asked me to remove his banner this evening. I thought that was a really upstanding move on his part. This really is not about, like I say, any, cutting pro wrestling promos on each other. Like I want to learn. This is all of our community. This is all of our industry. And clearly the guys are cool hanging out together. So just like I say, for full transparency on that. And also, to be transparent, I have used both companies. I've gotten shed test results from both companies. If one had a test that I wanted that the other didn't, I would still use both companies. So I'll leave it there. Enough with the disclaimers and all of that. Be cool is what I'm saying. So Charlie Williams is from Grey Rider Reptiles, and his website is called shedtesting.com. Dr. Ben Morrill is Rare Genetics Incorporated. His website is raregenetics.com, I believe. I should know that better. We're going to clarify that in just one moment. Please welcome back to the Proper Royal stage, Charlie Williams, and for the very first time ever, Dr. Ben Morrill. Boom. Gentlemen, how are you?
Hey, how's it going?
Very, very good. Hey, thank y'all for being here. In just 1 second, we're going to ask why in the world you both wanted to come on this show, because I need that answer too. But Ben, I want to make sure that I'm representing you right and I got your website right. Is it raregenetics.com or is it raregeneticsinc.com?
Yes.
So both, cool.
One of those two.
Either one of those two. Okay, will they both get you there?
I honestly don't know. I think it's just raregenetics.com, but if it's not, then it's Rare Genetics Inc.
That's how you take the pressure off the host that was ill prepared. You're like, I don't know.
You did just as good as I would have done.
raregeneticsinc.com.
Okay.
There you go.
Charlie coming through. I also should say real quick, Charlie, is that a Best Dressed Balls hat that you have on?
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Blessings to Troy and his family. I'm going to leave it there, but man, I got caught up on those details today. Troy, you got the whole community on your side, man. We're thinking of you. So definitely. Ben, why come here? Like, it would be easy for somebody to go, there's really two players in this space. I don't need to share the stage with the other player. Why come on the show? Why do this? Especially if Charlie advertises for it. It must feel like an away game, so to speak, for you.
Oh, I mean, for me, I'm as snake dork and genetics dork as it gets. So, I mean, I'm very happy to talk about this. And Charlie and I talked, together after Steven. And once again, I would further what you said. Thanks so much, Steven, for talking to everyone and making this happen. But I told Charlie, like, my main concern and fear, I've been in biotech industry, biological, manipulation, genetic engineering kind of stuff for over 20 years. So my main concern, I've seen industries where we try to introduce some kind of either genetic testing or genetic modifications, and that doesn't get accepted by the industry. So I'm much more concerned about that. I'm very thankful. Everything that I've seen and heard, Charlie's treated his customers very well and represented, what my dream has been is for this to become a part of the reptile industry, something that's a significant tool for reptile keepers and breeders. I'm much less worried about, I guess, the things that maybe other people have thought that we're worried about.
Well, yeah. And I mean, I think I don't want to, I don't know the inner workings of anybody's businesses, of course. I have to think business is going pretty well, though. I mean, you both have made just an incredible, not a made an impression. The industry has changed, and it's been within the time that I've been doing this show, which is only, I mean, August will be 3 years. So, I mean, this is from the time it went available till now has been lightning. When did you make your first test available? What was that first test that you made available? When was that?
That's kind of a fun part of the history. So Sean and I have been friends since like the mid 2000s, but in 2011 I just got my PhD. I was at the Tinley show in October of 2011, just barely graduated with my PhD. And I was talking with Sean. It was the first time we met in person. We just always talked online before that. But that's where this idea kind of came up. Hey, let's make this happen for reptiles. It's been done in other species, been done in birds for sex determination for already 10 years at that point. So by the time we actually had our first test, we were both carpet python breeders mostly at that point.
I see.
But we, wanted to make something available. We wanted a green tree python sex determination test, and that still has proved to be difficult. But our very first test was in 2017. We made a colubrid sex determination test available.
Gotcha. And what about the genetics of ball pythons? Just selfishly with my show and the audience here, what was the first test and the first shed test you made available for ball pythons?
So we did some for people. I tested things out myself and, saw that things were working for me. Started making it available to people in what would that have been 2 years ago? So 2022.
Yeah.
But it was Tinley that year was kind of the main opening. I think we had 7 or 8 tests available by that point, something like that. But it was Tinley 2 years ago. Was
that what you would call like a beta phase, or what they might call beta testing in the tech world? Or was that had you already done that with sort of friends and family, or like Charlie, I know you work with like Baker's Patreon group, working out your mechanics and your processes?
When I first started doing it, well, it took me probably about a year of researching to even get it right. But once I started getting it right, I would just get some of Baker Blue Line Morphs Patreon guys. They were sending me sheds, and I was just testing theirs, and my own, like nobody else's, because I didn't have the balls, I guess, to offer it out to the public until I really knew what I was doing.
Well, yeah. Well, and that's not even balls. That's probably smart business. Like the last thing you want to do is have people make breeding decisions or sales decisions and then it be wrong.
Yeah, I didn't care about those guys. Screw them.
I mean, a friendly audience number. It's like going to your first open mic. Like you want to invite your friends and your family to come see, or the total opposite, total strangers, where you can disappear and never be seen again. Is the other way to go about it, as well. Well, thank you all very, very much for being here. I'll ask you both, because you came to this in very different ways. I know Charlie's story pretty well, and I've seen sort of the publishing of your story, Ben. Are you guys, and you guys can both give your thoughts on this, are you guys farther along than you ever imagined? Or is that, I mean, I know that there must be a piece of you where you're like, this is just getting started. I mean, mathematically, it's just getting started. All the genes versus what's available. There's tons of stuff to do. But this is, to me, feels like it's just been lightning speed. I mean, I remember Hannah Seidel being on my show talking about this, and it sounding like an episode of the Jetsons, and bam, here we are,
Yeah, like for me especially, obviously, I'm done way more than I ever thought it would be. It was a hobby for me. It wasn't, I never thought of it really going to be a business. I thought it was going to be just a hobby, and like everything else that interests me, I wind up having to figure it out and do it. And it just becomes a very expensive hobby. But this wound up working out, and it just snowballed. Yeah, I mean, now that I'm here and it's, doing well, I think like Ben was probably going to say as well, you want to see what else we could do, what else we could bring out, and what other tests we could help people with, different species, different anything.
Mm-hmm. Ben, what about you on your vision? Was there I think you said it was 2 years ago. Was it the October or the March Tinley?
October.
Oh, so less than 2 years ago. So less than 2 years ago, you're pitching this in person, and now here we are today. And I've got questions on volume here in a little bit, but we'll just say here we are today. Is this exceeding expectations? Is this on point? Is this something you could have pitched to investors? I mean, what did you feel?
For me and for Sean, our kind of mentality, which is kind of odd for me coming from academics. I want to, pay for something myself, make something that's valuable to people that can be sold, and then use that money to develop something else. So it wasn't something we did have people offer that, interest in investing, but it was definitely something that we wanted to get going, the two of us, with what we could do. And I'm very thankful. I had lots and lots of crazy nights, still working a full-time job and trying to get all this stuff going, which Charlie certainly knows how that feels. And, it was definitely crazy. It reminded me of when I was getting my PhD. I had my third kid was born like 2 months before I defended for my PhD. And I remember
zombie land.
I would work, and then I would see that the sun was coming up. I was like, oh, shoot, I got to go to sleep. So I'd sleep for 2 hours, go work. I had to do a 40-hour job by that point because I ran out of student, the
Right.
covered credits. So I would sleep for a couple hours, go to work, come home, hang out with the kids for a couple hours, and then work again. So it kind of felt like that again. But yeah, I mean, it was thankfully worked well enough that I was able to quit the pharmaceutical job I was doing, genetic stuff for them. It was a very, very safe job and good paying job. But ever since 2011, when we first talked about this is all I've thought about and tried to push ahead as much as I could. So when I had a chance to jump, I jumped.
All right. I got to take one quick second here. Troy, thank you for sharing the news. I don't think you saw earlier just a moment ago, but definitely thinking of you and your family. I'm so happy to hear that news about Michael. We'll leave it there, but so many blessings to you and your family. You've been amazing to so many people in the industry. So thanks for being here. I'm sure you've got plenty on your plate without us diving into anything further, but so glad to hear that news for you, Troy. You talk about having a safe job and then having a dream, man. And that is something that we have in common. I had a safe job. It wasn't as cool as all these racks behind me, So, so you've quit that job. This is it for you right now. Is this full time for you? Yeah.
It's a lot of it. I grew up in a family, like everyone that I knew, like all my aunts and uncles that went to work, they all got degrees and went to work in a big corporation. So it was very scary to me to think about, having my own company and not having a safe paycheck and having a wife and 4 kids. But, Sean's grown up his whole life. He's a serial entrepreneur. He was breeding fish and, catching reptiles and stuff and selling. I think that's how he paid for college. And so he's very comfortable with it. And over time, he slowly chipped away at me. And so when things started working well with the ball python tests, we made it happen.
Good for you. I know the feeling. It is still very foreign to me to say, yeah, there was a salary, there was a 401k, I got a paycheck the last time I went to Hawaii. Like those are all out the window. That is weird to me. But then there's cool days like today. I was at the grocery store and a customer said, "Can you call me?" I sold a snake in the produce aisle. Fantastic. I sold a snake at the barber shop this week. I didn't, the other barber in the thing has a bunch of snakes. He's like, "No way, man." He's like, "Can you bring one up here?" I was like, "Yeah, actually I can." I went home, grabbed these.
Right on.
Anyway, I don't know that I'm advocating selling snakes at barber shops, but if the opportunity comes, it's,
might be a health violation.
Yeah, that's true too. We'll keep not on my part, on theirs. We'll keep we'll keep that down low. Guys, let's talk about really quickly, and again, not in any kind of friction sort of way, or however you guys want to go about it. How do you guys, for your own self, not necessarily about the other person, for the audience, how do you guys differentiate your business? What do you think each of you brings to the table? And I do not want to turn this into a debate. I don't need rebuttals and all that stuff. But it was a question I had down, and I think it's important because there literally is very, very few alternatives. There's some academic research alternatives, and I think there's some, what would you call it, hobby or slight hobby business alternatives or early stage, but reliable options. You guys really are it. Charlie, what differentiates you from Dr. Ben's RGI?
For me, it's just, it's just me. I just got a part-time employee who helps out, so that's huge. But I'm always going to be here. I'm just the guy. I'm only going to be able to do a certain amount. I'm never going to be able to be that because I can't quit my day job. So I try to just make up for that with personability with all my customers. Just trying to talk to everybody and trying to give as much information and as best customer service as I can and help people out whenever I can. Because I do have that safe day job where I could afford to do that. But, I would love for this to be the only thing I do. But I can't do that at this point.
Right.
And especially with it not being my background, and I'm no doctor, I'm just a nut job that likes to Google and YouTube stuff. Yeah, I mean, I try to give people as much information as I can coming from someone like them. Sometimes it might be easier for me to explain something to somebody than Ben would do it, because honestly, he's obviously way smarter than me and way smarter than our customers, especially in this topic, So, those are the things I like to do. Just like talk to people, BS with people, just make sure they know that this is what's going on. This is how I do it. And this is, just to gain trust and just show that I'm willing to, learn as much as I can and, just keep pushing.
Dr. Ben, what about you? What separates you? What's the distinguishing factor, you think?
Well, we've been able to scale up quite a bit. So that was really the biggest thing we've been doing in the last year and a half, really 2 years, because before we went to that Tinley, we were already starting to scale up. And that's a massive effort to get infrastructure and get workflows and all that stuff, so it's reliable and all that. So that's really been a huge thing where we have our fast testing. We're able to turn tests around. We have the capability to, I think we've done 500 tests in a day. We could easily do 1,000 in a day, 5 days a week if we needed to. And we could scale up from there without it being too painful. So that's a huge, one of the biggest things when it comes to genetic testing is volume. The more volume you have, the faster and cheaper you can do things for your customers.
Sure. So the economies of scale. Yeah.
Yeah. So if we're selling millions of tests a year, then we could do something like an at-home test, like a pregnancy test. Like, obviously it would work in a different way because we're not, testing for hormones, but, the more volume you have, the more efficient you can make the process, both time-wise and money-wise. So that's something we've been working on, making it faster and cheaper. And then also you're essentially, when you're purchasing from us, that's, that right now to date, we are not a profitable company. Everything that we've brought in, we've just turned it around and spent it, which I think Charlie's done the same thing. So we're both successfully running not profitable companies so far. But there's so much growth and it's fun. Like, it's exciting. I know Charlie's been breeding for a while. I'm the same way. Like, it's fun and exciting, and it's something that I know, lots of my friends and fellow breeders are, figuring out ways that, that can help them. So it's a lot of fun. But you've got someone with over 20 years experience designing genetic tests, finding mutations, working for you to specifically focused on reptiles. My PhD was on quantitative genetics of reptile reproduction with ball pythons, with like 10,000 eggs from Dan and Colette Sutherland. there's not really someone that's more focused on reptile, especially ball python genetics than, in academics that I've seen. I don't know if there's any other PhDs on ball python genetics.
I was going to say, I don't think so. I don't know anybody that can hang with that last paragraph. And I feel like we would know them if they were out there. So, somebody obviously doesn't know what I'm doing right now. My apologies. And interesting, you talked a little bit about scale, and you both have a little bit. I'm curious because I like figuring out business. Like I love my animals, but then being able to say, I want to figure out the business of these animals has been like, that's the gas in my tank. And I was curious because I like thinking of different ways that different portions of the industry can quantify things. So like we talk about down market and this and that. Well, so I'm curious with REDLINE. Well, are they shipping less? Who are they shipping more volume? Like they could quantify without bias, without anything, factual numbers. So I was curious, do you all have a good feel, just a raw number of how many people have used your service? Like how many breeders out there are at the level, because I think once every breeder hits a certain level, they give a damn about shed testing. Like this is not a secret anymore. It's not a boogeyman. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. And we'll talk a little bit about whether things are binary or whether there's gray areas on certain tests. But I think it's well established and well accepted enough that the people that want to try it at a certain point of breeding probably have. Are you able to I don't want any proprietary information, but are you guys able to do you have 900 customers? Do you have 9,000 customers? Do you have 19,000 customers? Not orders, but like specific people, I'm saying. Any way to quantify any of that?
I have the ability to look that up, but I don't know if it's just I don't have the time or what, but none of that ever really. I guess I'm a bad business person because I don't pay attention to any of that. And mainly because it is just me and it is my side business. So I don't really have the time to sit there and make all these pretty charts up and look at everything.
Well, it always seems nebulous because I see like the same, I bet I know, 95% of the people in the audience right now. If we, I'd be like, I might not know them in person, but like,
there's definitely people that you'll never see on YouTube or Instagram posting that are testing. There's definitely people that are out there that are doing that. Big breeders that nobody really even knows about. Because if you're not in this whole like ball python reptile clique where you're on everybody's YouTubes or you're in everybody's Instagrams, you might not know them, but they're still fairly decent sized breeders and they're definitely testing.
Well, that's what's curious to me. Do we I don't want to get in this little. And I see it. I don't want to get in this little bubble where we have these blinders and we pretend like there's nothing outside of our world. And then we complain that the market's down because we all sit and tell each other the market's down. Because the second I get out into the real world or I go to like Facebook where breeders shun, there's tons of happy people out there that are like, yeah, that's a great banana. That's wonderful looking. You know what I mean? And so I wonder what our bubble is. Dr. Ben, any insight on that for yourself, man?
I'm with Charlie. That's the last part of things that I think about. I'm so worried about quality control and designing new things and validating new things. If we had Sean on here, which, maybe we'll do another show sometime and have Sean join us. That's definitely the part that Sean, like I said, he's the business person. He's the serial entrepreneur. So I think you would really get a kick out of talking with Sean, whether it was person to person or doing a show with Sean.
Yeah,
that's definitely his wheelhouse.
Well, let me tell you, there's always another Tuesday. So if you want to put a good word in for me, and if the day comes that there's not another Tuesday, this is going to be the least of my concerns. So, I would love to. And that's the kind of stuff that I love. And because I sit here and I wonder, because I wonder about scale too. And I wonder about my own production. There's always people outside of the realm that I've produced and sold to. But our entry-level buyer is going to buy quad hets. I don't have time in my day to explain what a quad het is to a day one pet owner. So do I need to go this way or this way? And obviously the answer is in the middle. But anyway, I was curious about that, but that will go.
There are definitely even those pet people that still like. I'll get messages from people who go like, "Hey, I have this snake. I have one snake, and they told it to me as a Mojave." Or a lot of times I'm like, "Just send me a picture of it," and I'm like, "Yeah, that's a Mojave," or like, "I have no idea. Yeah, we could test it," but there's definitely small people that do it and large people that do it.
Sean C, I don't know if that's the Sean.
Yep.
He says I can answer if you want. I'll let you guys sort that out, or we can save it for another episode. But that's out there if you like. I'll leave that be for right now, but that's out there. And let's see. Somebody said, QB's tails and scales. The market is down. I prescribe to the idea of we could create our own market. And if we sit here and listen to each other scream the market's down, well, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. But that's my philosophy that I run through the show. But anyway, that's the common word on the street, of course. So let me see. What else do I have on the topics here before we get to the audience questions? Yeah, let's talk about this. It feels like, and I don't know if this is the case or not, it feels like there's times in the tests and I'm a layman on this, so I'm going to need some help. Walk me through slowly. But it feels like there's times where a test isn't necessarily just a binary yes or no, or it's more complicated than a binary yes or no. And I see different pricing on different tests. Can either or both of you all take me through without me needing a PhD, just, dude on the street with a camera in his basement here. What are some of the determining factors that drive the challenges or any uncertainty or the higher price point?
Go ahead, Ben.
Well, I was just going to say, I'll answer the question of, whether tests are more complicated or whatever. All of the tests we're doing are answering a question that has three different, as long as the test works. Obviously, sometimes the DNA is bad. There's no, we got to rerun it. But if you do get a good run, there's three things. There's either 0 copies, 1 copy, or 2 copies. That's it.
Right. I got that. That's it. That's everything.
Doesn't matter if
it doesn't matter if we call it super, het, nothing.
Yeah. Mojave, Pied, G-stripe. There's either 0 copies, 1 copy, or 2 copies. Now, we as
Thank
people
God. I got
have
that
come
part.
up with recessive and incomplete dominant and all this stuff. That's to help us what's on the outside. But the DNA code, you have 0 copies, 1 copy. So your results are going to be negative, het, or homozygous. That's it.
That's right.
And het
got it
on the codoms means it's the single gene form, because that's one thing, I'm sure you guys I get too. Like, what do you mean it's het yellow belly? It's because it has 1 copy. Homozygous yellow belly will be an ivory.
Yeah, that was a topic I had with Dr. Seidel. I was like, so these are just human constructs. Nature doesn't care about this dominant, incomplete, dominant, recessive, any of that. It's 0, 1, or deuce. That's it. 1, 2, 0, 1, or 2.
Yes.
And
0 really is just no.
Since I've been learning more and doing this, I always get the question like, oh, is it recessive or dominant? Who cares?
Right.
It doesn't matter. It's the same thing.
Call it whatever you want.
Super is just as hard as it is to make a visual anything.
That's right.
It's the same thing.
Especially now that you can test,
right.
So if there's 1 copy or 2 copies there.
Right. Yeah.
And so then, if we're looking for 0, 1, or 2, and I envision, you can probably clarify this, but I envision there's sort of slots or pegs. So there's either no peg, there's 1 peg, or there's another peg, and I envision it on a double helix. That could all be made up in my mind. That could be wrong. But if that's the case, why would you say, is it just demand? Why are some tests, on the lower end of the price range, and then some are higher? I saw the yellow belly complex as a higher test price point on that. Is that just demand driven, like classic economics, or is there more that goes into it?
If you're looking on ours, we do all there's actually 6 tests we have to run. So you're getting 6 results for 5 different genes. We have to run 2 tests for yellow belly. So as a group, you're paying for 6 tests. But if you're just getting yellow belly or just getting asphalt, that's going to be a similar price.
Oh, interesting. So, okay, so let's put a different spin on it. So so say somebody has something that's visual and they're like, man, I don't know if this is highway, pavement, super gravel, super asphalt. I picked it up from a dude off of Craigslist at a Dollar General parking lot. What is this? That one test is going to, you're at least for RGI, we're talking about, that's going to cover all those answers.
Well, it wouldn't be one test. It's multiple tests, but it's their package group.
Yeah. Yeah. So we have two. Oh, I'm breaking up.
Frozen.
Am I back?
No, you're there. Adam's frozen.
Oh, Adam's frozen.
Oh, he's gone. All right. Adam's gone. Let's go.
Sorry, I was just cursing into the microphone because of my I was just cursing into the microphone because of my internet connection. That's me. Yeah, you guys could do what you want. If I am out, let it rip. I think I have audio only right now is what I got. I'm gonna take that for right now. So so that's a test for the complex then is what you're saying.
Yeah, yeah. So we have a big
for one service.
We have a big panel that's 30 different tests. And then we have two smaller or mini panels. One is the yellow belly complex. The other is the blue-eyed Lucy complex. So you also get 6 tests if you order that blue-eyed Lucy complex. So you would send one sample in, but we would do 6 tests on that one sample. And we can do that cheaper than if you're sending in 6 different samples for one test that we have to process all 6 of those separately. Whereas if you send one in and you want the yellow belly complex, we can just take one sample in and then do 6 tests on it. So we can do that cheaper.
I see. That puts it in much better context. And then maybe it's there, and it could have just been from quick show prep today. So I certainly don't want to put that in bad light. But understanding that, what about some of the others that have a little bit of a different price point? Charlie, I know you run different price points on yours. Is that just demand driven or the new items?
I think I wound up putting them all back to the same price, but yeah, there's obviously there's certain tests that are less popular than others, but some tests for me at least are cheaper to run than others, but I'm trying to get everything to this one method of testing so that they're all could be, the same price and, keep everything as inexpensive as we can. But Ben can probably talk about why they do their different pricing.
I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. Ben, well, go ahead. You know your product better than I do, for sure.
Yeah. So we certainly have some newer tests that we put a lot of money into to develop those tests. So for the first 3 to 6 or 9 months, and that's something Sean definitely handles, making that kind of a decision. But just to be able to pay ourselves back for all of those development costs, which then it just goes right back into designing the next one. So it's just a way, the ones that are newest, we have a little bit higher price point to try to help recoup that investment we already made, which then pays for the next test to get developed.
Yeah. Well, and for the record, I think that's totally fair. And every one of us in this room, in this audience would say, yeah, it's just as easy to make a visual sunset as it is a visual albino, but we know who's getting the money and where it's going. And I understand those market factors as well. There is a demand. And that's how most markets work. I know in biotech, it would be medical pharmaceuticals would give the same explanation of, hey, we put a whole lot of money into bringing this to market to help the world. We need to eat and we need to continue our business as well. So I get it philosophically. I'm sure it's not that pretty or that clean sometimes, but I get it philosophically, at least here in this conversation right here, for sure. So are there, maybe I'm drawing conclusions that I am incorrect about. Are there tests that are more certain and less certain? I think I had heard that there was a time where, at least at RGI, that there was like a grading, like, hey, this is like an A-rated test or a different grading. Is that, first, if I'm wrong, tell me I'm wrong. If that's correct, what goes into that sort of thing? Because it feels like there should be like you say, it's a 2, a 1, or a 0. What's going on here?
So anytime we develop a new test, I'm not going to make it available until I've run over 100 and it's over 99%. So if I run 150 and one is kind of weird and I reach back out to that. And these are known. So they're known heterozygous, known homozygous, or they're known to not have that trait at all. If something pops up different than expected, I'll reach out to that person and say, hey, you said this was like with the TSK xanthic. I had 3 that said TSK xanthic. So I assumed it was a visual. All 3 of them were visuals, but they tested negative. And so I reached out to that person. I was like, hey, these 3 say that they're TSK xanthic, but that's not what I got in the results. What are these? And he said, oh, all 3 of them are posets. That doesn't surprise me. I was like, okay, would have been nice to know.
Yeah,
so
that person gets moved to they get moved to a different column on the spreadsheet, right?
Yeah, when that happens, that's a lot of worry and because I'm thinking, oh, I got to redesign this, I got to do this and that, and then I hear back from like, oh, good, we're good to go.
Yeah.
But yeah, so like that first 100 to 200, I feel confident that what I can offer to a customer is going to be helpful the vast majority of the time. Most cases, it's going to be over 99% correct. So that's beautiful. But really so we do have grading, and I've started on our Reptile Genetics Weekly YouTube show. I've started we're trying to do 1 or 2 a month where we'll talk about in chronological order when the tests were developed. So ones like Pied and albino and candy and lavender albino, those, if we've run more than 1,000, like in panels where people say, hey, this is a het albino and clown, we know what it's supposed to be and it matches. So if we've done over 1,000 of those and there's a scientific publication that's peer reviewed about that can get A+. If we've run 500 of them, well, if we've run over 1,000, there's no publication. The highest it can get is an A. We're only going to give it an A+ if there's a scientific peer reviewed publication to go with it. And then if we
sorry to interrupt. Do you still submit articles for peer review and publication on this topic? I mean, do you keep that end of academia alive in your operation?
To this point, no, because I'm much more worried about making new tests.
Right.
I'm very thankful for my academic background, but I'm never going back. So
I think he should publish I think RGI should publish everything that they find.
Yeah, and we will happily do it once I have time. I would love to, but it's going to be a little while.
Yeah, I think Charlie might mean never mind. I'll keep
to get access to information. Yeah, that'd be nice, wouldn't it? That's also part of it, but really when it comes down to it, I don't have time. Like there's so many things you have to do to get something published. You can ask Dr. Seidel or Heather Rafi, Dr. Rafi up in Canada, like that's a way more time. Like I know that they're going to publish clown and I think VPI xanthic, and that's been available as a test for quite a while now, but it's still
they've been working on publishing that for a long time.
Yeah, so it's a completely different ball game, and one that I would love. I was telling someone else was asking me about that the other day. I was like, yeah, no, not only would I like to publish some stuff that we've done, but I want to write a book about all this craziness and have people, like you all that are part of this early journey that hopefully will be a lot bigger down the road, be part of a book at some point.
I bet in your career you'll find time for the book. I bet the academic publications are much more tedious and I don't know. Would you find them more rewarding or I mean, if you've already got the proof and you have income, that seems pretty rewarding to me.
Well, what I see as being very valuable. So those of you that are able to set aside your ball python breeding and just think of globally for science, for biology, for specifically animals, we really have a very unique thing with ball pythons because there's not really any that I can think of vertebrate species where you have so many color and pattern things. And if we're able to do the work and say, hey, these are genes that have to do with pattern, these are ones that have to do with color, these are ones that interact with each other in this way, like I can't think of any way as someone who loves reptiles and has always dealt with, well, I could do that work, but no one's going to publish it. When I was in academics, like no one cares about reptiles. If it was in a mouse or, something that affects human health, that's one thing, but it's really cool with what Dr. Seidel and Dr. Rafi and, a few people in academics have done, because it's a very unique situation where we have tons. So I think 15 years from now, ball pythons specifically could play a role in the more like, baseline broad science, because we're going to learn a whole bunch about these different genes that affect color and pattern that no one ever knew before. So I'm pretty excited about that.
The only thing I can think of that comes close to approaching it was just by luck. I used to be into cichlids, the fish and the African cichlids. And I saw a lot of parallels between those fish and ball pythons. And then I learned I didn't have to do water changes and they don't kill each other and all of that sort of thing. So, but yeah, I get your point. I cannot imagine something else. So I feel like the well would have to, like the scientific well of interest and intrigue has to be pretty deep though.
I think it'll take a little bit more time to show, just how broad and diverse this, what's within ball pythons is. But yeah, I think it's going to be a pretty cool thing that will be very valuable and help us figure out what's going on in other animals. How come some animals are striped, some are blotched, and you have some of both, and some are just, all no pattern at all. And then you never see any other, like, we'll have a lot of specific things we could look at in other animal species that we'll learn from ball pythons.
I hope so. And that'll be cool. Like, I do tell people, one of the things I love about ball, sitting around with Thanksgiving, why would you do that, Adam? Or in-laws, what is that? You have snakes, blah, blah, blah. But part of it is that what I can't convey to them is that we're in the middle of evolution happening, like almost daily. Like we're learning new stuff. We're proving that we're not. I'm experiencing the proof that you guys are coming up with, that such and such is one thing and such is different or the same. Or this time of year with hatchlings, we're all waiting to see what some combination that we've never seen before is going to look like. We all think we know it up here, but how's it going to happen? And they look at me like I just have 3 heads. They're like, well, okay, well. Don't worry, it's good. The bills are getting paid. We're fine, So, speaking of paying the bills, you guys have a different business model, and actually, audience, sit tight. This is the last little segment I have of my own, and then we're going to get to audience questions. If you guys have questions, I'm going to try and take notes and keep up, and I'll try and sift through what we get to and all of that. And we'll get to all of that. So don't go anywhere, audience. This is sort of my last little of my little topics to get to. Charlie, and you guys correct me along the way. Charlie, how do people purchase shed tests from you? What's your business model in that light?
So the website, shedtesting.com, everything,
okay.
Almost everything runs through that. Besides, I breed snakes too. So I do trades, people need tests.
There you go.
I need snakes. So I'm always up for that. But most of the business all just goes through my website, shedtesting.com.
Okay. And then I'm going to come back to you, Charlie, because Dr. Brennan has a much different business model. And I'm curious as to if there's any, if that thought has crossed your mind as well. So Ben, with RGI, what's the business model? There's some exclusive vendors. Talk about that. And then I'd love to hear maybe why or how behind that. It seems like it causes an unnecessary roadblock for some customers, but I'm sure that, your partners are great people. So, there's smart people in the room working on this, but tell me about the model and where that came from.
Yeah. So, we had the ability to do this, like I said, about 2 years ago, about, early to mid 2022. And, I know that where my strong points are and what I can do well and what I can do fast. And it's not, building website and building databases and stuff like that. And so we reached out to some people that already had some kind of, database or, contact with customers. So Morph Market and Clutch, were already established and had people and had a way to, have a storefront and people be able to purchase and have that, some kind of memory to travel with their animals, or at least within their collection to keep track of what's been tested and what hasn't. So for us to be able to make the tests available as fast as we could, that was the best choice at that point. So now if you are just getting one or two or, a small number of tests, that's really the only way you can do that is through Morph Market or Clutch. But now if you are going to do bulk ordering, you can send an email, raregeninc@gmail.com. So that's something we've started letting people know. Just send an email with your list. It can be just a list in the email or in a spreadsheet. And then Sean will get back with you for like a quantity discount. And you don't need to type everything into, one place or the other. You're able to just send a list and we'll do it like a bulk order. And a lot of the time they just share like a Google sheet of, maybe they have 30 they want to get tested and they want 2 for this one and 1 for that one and 5 for this one, different testing for different animals. And so we can, here's Sean saying new site coming soon. So that's something that Sean's been working on. And so we do have that also available. But for someone who's just getting 1 or 2, then you do still need to go through Morph Market or Clutch.
Gotcha. And do you might not have it yet. Do you have a definition of what bulk is? Where does that start and end?
For us, right now it's 10 tests. So
okay.
So it doesn't have to be 10 different animals. If you are, getting like this month, we've had a pick 4 special running, or you're paying for 2 tests and getting 4 done on a per animal. So if you're paying for 2, if you got 5 of those, that's 10 tests. And so you would immediately get a bulk discount. And then I think it's over 25 or something like that. There's another deeper discount. But that's, once again, Sean's the one that knows all those details.
And do you know, you might not know because these aren't your companies. Do you know if you have, and I'm slightly familiar with Clutch because I like transparency. I want to make sure everybody knows where I'm at. I do subscribe to Clutch. I have a membership or whatever the subscription is called. I can't recall if there's a free version on there. Do you have to be a paying member for Clutch to use your service?
No.
Obviously you have to pay for your service, but you don't have to pay for the Clutch one?
No. So that was the number one thing on the contract with both Morph Market and Clutch was somebody has to be able to just get a username and password and pay for testing. Okay. So you don't have to subscribe. You don't have to use their stuff. You can just say, hey, this is animal number 1. And I want to test it for clown. You don't have to put a bunch of information. It's helpful to us if you do, because then that shed, if it's also Wookiee or something else, then we can use that shed to help develop another test. So we really appreciate when people give more information. But if you just want to get on there and pay for 3 het clown tests, you can do that very quickly in Clutch or Morph Market.
Got it. Not really my place to say, but good for you. Good. That's what I like to hear. We don't have to be this exclusive club of
that would have been a
piling debt. Yeah, we don't need that stuff. I actually took for granted, and I actually do want to get to this before we jump into all the other questions. And Charlie, you and I have some experience on this from my own sheds. Talk to me about the process, the viability of sheds, what condition the sheds need to be in. How do people send you a shed? I actually have a customer of my own that was like, Adam, I need details from start to finish how to do this. And I'm like, you throw it in a bag with a label and you mail it. That's it. And he was like, that's it. And he's like, do I have to FedEx it overnight? And I'm like, no, just send it off, man. But Charlie, talk to us through it, because and you can use me as an example. I have sent some sheds that have produced 0 results because I didn't handle them properly.
The main thing for me is just, I don't mind getting a decent amount of shed. Like, you don't have to just send a tiny piece, because I like to be able to pick where I want it from, just because sometimes you could see where one part was maybe very wet for a long period of time. If it was hanging in the water bowl or something like that. And even after it's dry at that point, that's probably not going to work well. So I always tell people, get it out, hang it up. I hang them up, my own sheds when I'm testing, right on my rack, put a magnet there. It's that snake, and just let it dry for a couple days. It's some people don't want to wait, but just let it dry for a couple days. So even something like that.
Hook, magnet,
unrolling is a huge thing. Like, I try to tell people, unroll it. Like, don't let it look like that used condom just sitting there rolled up. Like, because that moisture is just going to stay in there. So even if it feels dry on the outside, all that moisture is still on the inside. You know, and for me, I've seen no rhyme or reason where the cleanliness look of the shed versus the dirty shed. Sometimes I'll get the most beautiful sheds I could see and be like, oh, this is going to be perfect. And I get nothing. And I test it 3 times and I get no DNA. Then I could get one of like, that ain't going to work. And it works. So it's hard to go based just on that. But it's keeping it dry. Don't make sure before you put it, if you're going to use a Ziploc and you're going to seal it up, make sure it's completely dry before you put it in there. Because I've gotten sheds that are literally matted, stuck, almost like glued to the plastic because it looked dry going in. But now once you zip that closed, all that moisture is going to stay in there. And I don't even open those. Those don't, there's no shot that's working.
Sometimes they turn yellow or green too.
Yes. So it's just, try to make sure there's no bugs or crap in there, please. That's great also. But yeah, spread it out, let it hang for a couple days. A lot of people use the little paper envelopes. Those allow it to breathe in case it isn't completely dry. So paper in the business that I'm in my day job, when we collect certain evidence, it has to be in paper, not in plastic, because you don't want nasty things to grow.
I would have thought different. I see that now. Have I just really curiously here, have either of y'all seen any correlation between like poor sheds from say a more tropical climate? Like I'm in Minneapolis now, but I moved from Florida. Like my shed's dry in like 3 hours in the winter here. It's so dry, just done. I shouldn't do that on the mic. Real just fast. In Florida, I could do you see them like deteriorate, or because there's more humidity, or do you see any issues? Has anybody?
I don't know.
Yeah, you guys are like, Adam, I don't know, man.
The only thing I could say I see with that is sometimes when it's somebody's first time sending in sheds and they send in several, like maybe I'm used to seeing one rerun in 30 or something like that. All of a sudden they send in 30 and there's like 15 that I have to rerun or I have to get new sheds for. So I'm like, okay, however you're collecting these, you've got to be more careful. And those people usually learn and it's never a problem again. I don't really see any clustering other than it's just like their first time doing it. And they probably just walk through their room and they're like digging through the stuff. They're like, oh, there's a little piece, there's my shed for that one. But other than that, it's really not a problem. The other thing that I would throw in, if you are going to use the envelopes, I do like that lets them breathe. But when you ship it, you probably want to have like a plastic outer part. So some of the mailers have a plastic outer covering, because we have had a few people that put them in those envelopes and it's fine all the time. But then at some point it got wet. Right. And so then, the shed's all through there wet and, it's not pretty. And sometimes, you've got the writing getting smudged and all that kind of stuff. So that would be the only thing. If you're going to use the little envelopes to put the shed in, when you actually ship it, try to use one of the mailers with plastic on the outside that'll kind of protect it from rain.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It's not a problem very often, but that's just one thing you can do to avoid it.
Gotcha. Well, thank you for taking us through that. I do get that question often, and it's something I take for granted now. But it like I say, when I first heard of this, it sounded like futuristic episode of the Jetsons. Like we're going to have flying cars next. So I could see it being overwhelming. Audience, sit tight. We are going to switch over to your questions. Like we always talk about, it's got to pay a few bills. Gentlemen, if we can take just a quick break for just a second. I think I have. The problem with having 3 people on the show is that it covers up our generous sponsors, but not today. And there'll be one that we conspicuously leave off. And I just thought this, I apologize, this is off the top of my head. But guys, REDLINE shipping, I got to tell you about it. If you're not using it, you should. Customer service, dependability. It's like a concierge service, man. For reptile people, by reptile people. Check out redlineshipping.com and use the promo code PROPER5. You're going to get an extra $5 off your next shipping label. There's a reason you see their logo everywhere in the industry. REDLINE Reptiles, that's Robbie down in Greer, South Carolina. Robbie is working with DG, Pied, and Clown, and the Dark Genes. If you're looking for doubles and triple het combos or visual combos with genes like Blackhead and Stranger on top of Desert Ghost, Pied, and Clown, check out Robbie in Greer, South Carolina at REDLINE Reptiles. Next is Portuguese Pythons out there in Chino, California in the Inland Empire. That's Danny and Renee Rocha. They are also working with some high-end combos. They have beautiful animals. They're wonderful people. I know they just hatched a clutch of super blackhead ultramels. I also have a 1.3 of an ultramel pied project from them with some codoms like blackhead and trick in there. So if that stuff sounds up your alley, check out Portuguese Pythons. Wonderful people to do business with. Ball Labs is Trevor in Aurora, Colorado. I got to spend some time and work with Trevor out in Denver at the Denver show with Troy, that Troy and Nick put on. Trevor is working with Puzzle, Ultramel, Clown, VPI Axanthic, and Tri-Stripe. And it was funny, in our original interview, he was like, I don't want to alienate people. Should I tell them I'm working with Monsoon, Zebra, and Sunset? I was like, yes, you should. So Monsoon, Zebra, and Sunset as well from Trevor in Aurora, Colorado. And last but not least is Chris at B and S Reptilia. Chris is the original sponsor of Proper Royals. I'm so proud to say that these sponsors maintain very long relationships with me, and I'm so thankful for that. Audience, check them out. Chris at B and S Reptilia is working with ball pythons, locality boas, colubrids. If the word Pituophis means something to you, as in the pine snakes and the bull snakes, Chris is your guy. He will be vending with me at the table, at our table at Tinley in October. And he is working on the necessary permits to legally have the Pituophis species there. We've not had them there before, so it's not me saying that we had them illegally before. We will have them, and it'll be legal this time. So come check it out. In the meantime, all of those sponsors contact are listed down below in the comment section. Those of you all that have sat through all of that, thank you so much. Those sponsors really make a difference in my daily life and my livelihood to be able to keep putting on this show. Tonight, we have Charlie from Grey Rider Reptiles and ShedTesting.com. And we have Dr. Ben Morrill from Rare Genetics Incorporated. If you're not familiar with any of what that means, just go back to the start and watch up to this point, and then we'll catch you up from this point on. We have a ton of input from a ton of audience members, which I really, really appreciate. I've also been taking notes along the way, so we will try and get to everything. I did agree, and the gentleman agreed with me as well, that we'll go, we got a little bit of a time limit, but we have a good amount of time to kind of quick fire through some of these. So some of these maybe we don't need to dive all the way into. We could go like a gut check, I think yes or no, definite yes or no, or who knows. I saw from the contents, the questions earlier. Banana Coral Glow. Is this settled? Is this still a debate? What's going on with Banana Coral Glow?
I've never tested or even tried to test for it because I think they're the same, and I'm not going to really waste too much time on that. But I don't know what Ben's thoughts are.
Ben, let's say yeah.
They certainly seem the same to me. It would be a massive coincidence for them to be have the same mode of inheritance, and no other tests or no other morphs do, and they look very similar. We do have some really good candidate spots for banana / coral glow, so we will have an answer on that maybe in the next month or two, or maybe it'll take another year. You never know. Now Charlie's getting to have some fun with that, learning what that's like, trying to chase hits. So we might have something for a banana test, which maybe isn't helpful a ton, but it's interesting since it's near the sex determining region on the sex chromosome, and there's some cool things about it.
There is cool stuff genetically about it. I was trying to explain that to somebody today. One thing we should bring up, and I don't think we have to go too far into it, but audience, also understand just banging out these tests, that takes a lot of time, money, effort. Time equals money. participation, that sort of thing. There was a test one time on, I think it was on one of my Candino Candy girls that proved out to be Candino. And Charlie and I got into the discussion of, well, why don't we just test it for this other albino? And he's like, because nobody's ever going to ask me for that. So I can't spend the money and the time developing that. So there is a economic concern and a business sense that has to go into this as well. So bear that in mind, audience. Dr. Ben, I saw you put out the acid test today. Dale at Constricted Reptiles, who's been an awesome friend and mentor to me, he commented on it in an interesting way. He said there's an acid test with interesting factors.
Oh man,
frozen again.
I guess
Are you back?
I'm back. Roll on without. Just let it rip. I'll catch up here.
So acid test with interesting.
Sorry, I don't know when I caught up.
You got
acid
interesting
test with
factors.
Interesting. He said, is there?
Yeah. So
he said acid test with interacting factors.
Yeah. So the cool thing with that is that we tried to have our video go up today at 7 p.m. and Kayla had it loading like 2 hours before that, but for whatever, we did some things a little different with how we processed the video, and it didn't actually go up. At least when I got on to come to this, it still wasn't up. So people may not have seen it yet. So we might be breaking this, first here.
Now we're talking. That's what we're talking about.
That's what Adam likes to hear.
That's right. So what we found
some
is
breaking news right here, baby.
That acid is very close to red stripe. So what that means from a breeder standpoint, we don't know for sure if it's in the same gene or if it's two separate genes that happen to be close to each other. Either way, those two could act like a super. So I'm not saying they're in the same gene, but I know that they are close enough that if you breed a red stripe acid to a normal, it's likely that you would get all acids or red stripes, no normals, no acid red stripes. But that's something that I've been asking around. I've only found one case where someone's bred an acid red stripe, and it was a small clutch, but they did indeed see that very thing. They got either acid or red stripe in every baby, and none of them are acid red stripes. So that's something that I certainly did not expect. And it would be extra interesting if they end up being in the same gene. That would be kind of like the yellow belly complex. You wouldn't have necessarily thought if you looked at a yellow belly, an ivory, and then looked at a super gravel or whatever.
Gravel, yeah.
They kind of look different, but they are in the same gene. So it's possible, but and time will tell. So different species and different chromosomes recombine in different ways. So just because they're that close doesn't necessarily mean we're going to see that, but it could be something like banana where it's close enough to that sex determining region that they travel together over 90% of the time, but every once in a while you get that crossover. That could be how red stripe and acid are, or it could be just like yellow belly and gravel. And they act like a super. It's possible. Now, this is just what we're seeing right now. That's why I reached out to breeders right away. And I'm very interested in seeing people's breeding results. And especially now that people know to kind of watch for that, it'll be interesting to see if that's really how it pans out, or if it's, 90% of the time, kind of like banana. But that's the same thing that we're seeing with monsoon and albino / candy. Those are also very close to each other. And so you might not get the ratios that you think that you would.
Wow. Okay, that's pretty good breaking news. And I think a whole lot of people's breeding plans just went a little bit haywire in their head when they're doing the math. I mean, even me, I'm going, I got 2 male acids. I got 3 red stripe het clowns. Okay, what am I doing here? Where am I going with this? On that topic, it came up today. I'm not sure if I'm supposed to say who it came up from. It came up today. Talk to us about where you're at on red stripe testing, certainty of outcomes, uncertainty. Is there more than one red stripe? What are we seeing on there? What are you seeing with red stripe right now?
Yeah, so what we're seeing in general, like last week we did an episode on special and showing that, hey, you know, there's at least 2 lines of special. The test that Dr. Sadell came out with that we've been using for our special test, it tests for 1 line. There's at least a second line. There might be 3. So there's a TCR line that definitely tests negative, and there's a NOCO line that also tests negative. All 3 of them are specials. They look similar, but a little different. So there could potentially be 3 different ones. With black pastel, there's at least 2 separate lines. The Barnhart line tests negative. There may even be a 3rd one. So what we're seeing is about 1 in 5, 1 in 6 of these morphs that we see as being one thing, or we kind of think like with Barnhart, maybe it's a little bit different or whatever. We're seeing that there are multiple mutations. And so red stripe, that test did really well. You know, like we were talking about earlier, how we grade things, we started talking about that. So the red stripe test would not be an A, you know, rating anytime soon, because we need to run a bunch of them. Well, while we've been running them, we've been able to see there are specific lines that come from like certain sires where if all the offspring get tested, they're all coming up negative. And some of them look like they're obvious red stripes. So it does seem like our current test is not capturing everything. Now, it could be that our test will be able to move it closer, because it's a SNP or a genetic marker that is highly correlated, you know, over 99% of the time in the first testing that we did, for red stripe. But now that we've run, you know, 600 or 700, now we're seeing that sometimes we'll get some that do not test as expected. And so we either need to find another marker that's better, or the causal mutation is even better if we can find that. Or it could be that there's 2 different lines and we have to have 2 different tests, like for ultramel, albino, and yellow belly. But, you know, we don't know this stuff until we start doing it, you know. And I heard Charlie say on other shows, you know, like, so how accurate is your test? Well, right now it does everything that we know right now, but you could send me in a clutch next week that it doesn't, you know, do properly, especially if it's a newer test like red stripe. Right. And we learn, hey, there's another line, or hey, you know, you've got to move that test closer to where the actual causal mutation is. So that's what we're going to find out. So I let people know in our episode that went up today that, you know, I have 3 different new red stripe tests that I'll be running this week into next week. And if those improve our red stripe test, then we'll be rerunning a bunch of people's red stripes, and you'll be able to reach out to us just like we did with Desert Ghost. If you got results that just don't make sense and you want us to rerun it, there's not going to be any charge for that. We'll make it right for you. And that's, you know, that's part of research. That's part of doing something new. And, you know, it's going to happen sometimes. We do the best we can. As soon as we know there's an issue, I'm working on it all the time to make it better. And so we hopefully one of these 3 will improve that test, and we'll have something even better for everyone.
So I have acids and confusions. Are you able to say now for sure they're the same?
We had tons. So Dale Richards and Josh Jensen sent us tons of acids. So I had like 70 or 80 acids to run. I really didn't have very many confusions, so I've only run a couple. But this week, that's another thing I'll be doing this week and the next week, is running a bunch of confusion. So I'll be able to give an answer. Hopefully on our show next Tuesday night, we'll have an answer on confusion as well.
Cool.
There's a comment in the comments. Adrian, it is possible to have an acid red stripe. An acid red stripe would not produce another acid red stripe. It would produce acids or red stripes. So you can have an acid red stripe if this, assuming it's false, or this all comes to fruition. But in general, if those were allelic, you can have the combination, you just can't recreate the combination. So it's 2 different things there, Adrian, just to clarify what you're
right. It'd be just like having a highway. Right. If you have a highway and you breed it to a normal, you're not going to make another highway.
Unless you have a highway or whatever on the other side.
Right. Yeah. If you breed it to a normal, can't happen. If you breed it to a yellow belly or an asphalt or whatever, gravel. But yeah, just think about it the same as with highway or freeway.
There we go. Has there been a situation? We talk about different lines of things, but is that is that the same thing or different as just two different genes? So say, let's just, for sake of ease, let's just stick with this red stripe thing for a minute. Is it possible that it's just two different genes that phenotype look very similar? We've interchanged them, or is that?
Right.
Yeah. So axanthic is a perfect example of that. There's 3 different places on 3 different chromosomes where you have VPI, and you have TSK, and you have GCR, and others that are similar to those now that we're figuring out. But yeah, those are 3 different mutations and 3 completely different chromosomes that assort completely independently of each other. And you can be het for one and het for another, and not get an axanthic.
Right.
So
those aren't compatible.
What's that?
Those aren't compatible, but
right.
You could also have a like the red stripe, that if there's another line of it, it could be compatible with, like ultramel A and B, they're compatible.
Yes. So in that case, they're right by each other on the same chromosome in the same gene. Then those are going to be compatible. Yes.
And
so it can happen either way.
Gotcha. So and again, these are just human words that we've attached to it. But to me, that sounds like more of lines of a trait versus really on axanthic. That's just 2 different traits. Those aren't lines of the same thing, right? Just because visually they look similar.
I think we use the wrong words for a lot, like
right. That's my point. There we go. Yeah.
You could say line breeding, like when you're line breeding for a specific trait, the gene it's going to be still the same mutation, but maybe the phenotype looks a little bit better on this, and you'll line breed that. It's not going to change what gene is causing that. But if you have 2 separate genes like the axanthics, then they're not going to be compatible. But if you have a different line of or let's not use red stripe, let's use something we don't know that might have a second line. Like if you have a better quality chocolate, for instance. So you have Garcia chocolate is a line of chocolate. And I can tell you now that is the same as a chocolate. They're the same thing. Wookiee and chocolate are not the same thing. They're on different things. But Garcia chocolate and regular chocolate, you would say that's a line, because Garcia chocolates you see, they do look better than some other chocolates, but they're the same gene. That just must be maybe a higher quality one. And, that's what I would think a line is,
Yeah. I would agree on that too. I would think a line would be, again, just human words. If it were a Venn diagram, a line would be inside the circle versus 2 circles next to each other, so to speak. A couple quick questions here on the axanthic topic. I guess we've probably already answered it, but could somebody do a double visual of the 2 different lines of axanthic and a hope to magnify it, or a hope to imagine what that would look like? Have we seen that? Does anybody know of that sort of thing?
Not that I know
that's
of.
from Chris at B&S. That's from Chris at B&S Reptilia.
It can happen though, because they are 2 different genes, but who knows what it would look like.
Yeah, the only reason it wouldn't is if for some reason when it's homozygous for both of those, it kills the embryo. As long as it's not lethal to be double homozygous, then we should be able to find out. My guess is that, from what's happened in, mice and other things, it's probably going to be if the 2, like if the 2 axanthics, if one is more drastic than the other, you're probably going to just see the same thing as that more drastic one. I wouldn't imagine. And if the axanthics are very similar, I would imagine the double recessive is still going to look similar. But you never know till you do it. It could turn out all black. It could turn, all kinds of different things because no one's done it. So,
or just magnify the contrast that we're all after sometimes on things as well. Color pattern and contrast.
Real quick, since I slipped up on the chocolate thing, but Dr. Rafi in Canada, I've been helping her with the chocolate Wookiee spider complex, and do
we have definite answer?
Yeah. So we're still testing a bunch of them, validating it, but it looks very, 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 very good that we have the gene and the causative mutation for that complex. And so chocolate and Wookiee are different, and
yes,
Garcia and regular chocolate are the same. Those are the two things that I wanted to make sure I checked on first, that everybody's always asking me.
That literally was my last question of the night.
That's
I was
awesome.
like, one selfish one for the host. I'm getting this one. All right, sweet. Well, we did it a little sooner than the end of the night. I got a couple more to get through that I promised some people. We got just a couple minutes. Hey, thank you so much, Chris. I appreciate that. Leviathan Snakes earlier gave some cash, but also they were the ones that Stephen specifically, I know Courtney probably had something to do with it too, really brought this all together and talked to the three of us and convinced all three of us this wasn't a crazy idea. Let's charge on. Jen at High Viz Pythons, thank you also for the contribution. You get to skip in line. Question for RGI: what changes were needed to the Enchi test to avoid false positives?
So the Enchi test was an example where our initial genetic marker we were using for the test, like I said, is highly correlated with the Enchi the Enchi morph. We just needed that was kind of like what we're seeing with red stripe right now, where it was fine for the first couple hundred, and then we kind of saw over the next. There's one specific run where we did 250 panels or whatever all at one time, and we had one or two pop up that were very clearly not Enchis, but they weren't Enchi in the breeding, and that's why the panels have been so helpful to us, because people know what they expect, and then if something comes back that doesn't match the pairing or whatever, then we know, okay, this is a real problem. So we just needed to test and find a marker that was closer. It could be that we have the causal mutation now, or we have a marker that's closer and higher correlated, but that problem's gone away with Enchi.
Nice. What is both gentlemen? I think anyhow, I think I know a little bit of the answer, but I might not. What is and I have a second part to this question as well. What's the progress on Zebra? That's the hot one that I got a lot of heat today on the topic of the questions. Where are we at on Zebra?
I should have Zebra data back any day, possibly tomorrow. So hopefully, like Ben said earlier, it could be next week, or it could be next year where we find it. But I sequenced Zebra already, so I should have that data back any day now, and then the work will start on that.
And for us lay people, the sequence will still need to be, what would we say, statistically verified, or getting the database back means it's ready to go? It's good.
No. The data back is just the genome, the whole genome sequencing that we do, where we send in the sheds and they sequence the known samples of homozygous zebras. Now you have to take that data and compare it with the normals and all that, and do a lot of testing and searching and going off hits and hunting it down.
Okay, so it's closer, but we're not there yet.
No. Yes.
Gotcha.
Same with us. So if you have zebras, send in zebra sheds. That's what helps make these tests happen. Right. We literally cannot do it without you. So if you're asking about a zebra test and you've got a zebra, or for sure het zebra, send those sheds in so that we can use them to make it. So we find all these markers that are unique to individuals, and if we have a group of zebras and a group of non-zebras, the software will tell us which of those markers are only in the zebras. Well, if we have only a small number, we'll have a lot of false positives that are just, in the zebras. But if we have 50, then all of a sudden that narrows it down to a small few that we can actually chase after. And it's more likely one of those is going to be the answer. So more zebra sheds.
And also, because even if I have enough zebra sheds to do the sequencing, now I need to validate it. So I want to use different sheds than the ones I sent in, because Ben, tell me if I'm wrong on this, but in my head, I would think that those are going to test, since they're in that pool of sheds getting sequenced, I don't want to retest them on my validation, right?
It's certainly better if you have more. Yeah, the more you have, definitely the faster. So for all of you as a customer, the more sheds you send in, the faster we're going to get it, first developed and then validated. So if we have to just reuse the ones we already have to do as much validation as we can, we may not have a concrete answer after that. We might still need more sheds. So yeah, definitely keep sending them. If there's a test, every time someone asks me online, I'm like, we don't have that yet. If you have any of that, send us sheds. If you know anyone that has those, send us sheds.
I know. I tell people, hey, if you want something and we don't have, just be the middleman. Collect them all and send them to me. You know, whatever. Yeah. Just, you know, it's yes, it costs time and money, but when we could get to it, we could get to it. You know, I don't think there would ever be anything that I would say, no, I'm definitely not going to do that. You know, so if there's something that people want, get all the people you know that are working that project, and please try to label everything properly.
From a research standpoint, of course.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Last two really fast ones. Putting the cart way ahead of the horse. Any opinions on Mackenzie versus Zebra yet, or just you would only have gut, eyeball tests?
For me, it would just be an eye test, and I don't have either of them, so I don't know.
I'm the same.
All right. I got Mackenzie stuff coming your way soon. And hopefully we'll call that Zebra before long and clarify things, but we'll see. We skipped over on the chocolate Wookiee conversation. Does Stranger fit in that conversation anywhere?
I don't have a Stranger test, and I have not sequenced it, so I don't know. I haven't tested Strangers for either of them, but I highly doubt that it would test positive for either one of them. I'll certainly throw it in there and see.
Okay.
But I am Shadow is the one gene that people have been asking me to see if it's the same as either one of them. So I'm testing a Shadow tomorrow to see if that tests positive for either Wookiee or chocolate.
Yeah, and I think Raven was in that conversation as well, which I know has been around a long, long time. So I don't know if that's in that mix as well.
Yeah, that's something. I probably have them, but I'd have to find the Raven sheds. But I think Chris from B and S said he's sending me some, so we'll see.
All right. Gentlemen, I made you a promise that in under about 120 seconds, I'd have you out of here. I think that's pretty close to the finish line. I want to tell you, thank you. Audience, thank you. It's been a blast hanging out. I love diving in on this stuff and really picking it apart. Thank you, gentlemen, for both participating. Did we ever, Ben, did we ever get the website sorted out? Rare Genetics.
Charlie got it.
Yeah.
RareGeneticsInc.com, ShedTesting.com.
And I tell you, I do envy them for not having to deal with developers and websites, because that's the worst part. You know, being able to have somebody else selling your test for you definitely is got to be huge, because that's one of the biggest pains in my butt is dealing with the website. And like I said, it's me, so bear with me, people, if it goes down or whatever. Yeah, I'm doing my best.
Don't not go check out the website though. We'll make Charlie suffer a little bit. Let's just put them all to work. ShedTesting.com, RareGeneticsInc.com. Thanks everybody. I really appreciate it. Gentlemen, stick around for just 1 second. Love to say thanks before I send you off for the evening. Audience, if you liked it, hit the like button. Thanks for the contributions. Very kind of you. And if you're new to the channel, love to have you back. Feel free to subscribe if it's up your alley. I'll see you next time, next Tuesday night, 8 p.m. Cheers, everybody. I don't have the button ready. It doesn't, I do the big finish. I don't have the button ready. Here we go. Cheers, everybody. Thank y'all. Good night.